Good afternoon, everybody. It's midday and it's Thursday, which means it's Ergonomics with me, Graham Coath, and Stephen Howe. Hi, Stephen.
Hi, Graham. Thursday again for us.
Thursday again this week. I've just been down to get a mug, a big mug.
Yes,
a big mug.
Yeah,
of tea, because the weather's turned absolutely dreadful, isn't it?
Absolutely. I know we were just chatting before we started, but it's raining here in the West Midlands, and it has been for a few days, and I think it's forecast to carry on. So the ironic thing being pubs and restaurants being allowed to open outdoors. The weather was fantastic when we were in lockdown till probably the first week of April, which was perfect weather for eating outdoors. As soon as they're allowed to open outdoors, the heavens open. You just couldn't write it, could you? I mean, there must be some of those restaurateurs and publicans who are, pulling their hair out, aren't they? They've invested a huge amount of money, obviously expecting to be able to get some sort of return, and then the UK weather has done its usual one and given them a kick in the backside, and it's gone the other way again.
Well, the other thing with it as well is this whole holiday piece. Because it's coming around that time of year now, isn't it? When people start to think about their holidays, and a lot of people have, probably had holidays booked. I mean, we've had a holiday booked now to Bulgaria for, I don't know how long it is, but and last year we had to postpone it, and we carried it over.
Yeah. And
this year we're meant to be going, but that looks very unlikely at this juncture. And of course, we've had to pay £1,000 more.
Yeah.
Because it's this year, not last year.
Yeah.
But you've got to wait for the holiday company to tell you that it's cancelled. Otherwise, obviously, if you pull out, then you lose all of your money. So, but, from a psychological and a mental health point of view and everything else, we weren't too worried about that when it looked quite nice and the weather looks as though it might be going nice. But, when the rain comes in this country and it gets cold, like today, you can see it's dark. I might even have to turn the light on in a minute.
Yeah.
And actually pay some electricity. But, but when that happens, we all start to go, oh, we want to go abroad. Want a bit of that. But immediately overnight, so all of the green countries in the traffic light system were announced, which was a very small number of countries, wasn't it? And immediately all the flights doubled in price.
What a surprise.
What a surprise. And I can understand it from one point of view, because otherwise, if people don't claw back money, they're all going to go bust.
Yeah.
And we won't have any airlines to take us anywhere in the world anymore. But I don't know what's gonna happen with holidays abroad, Steve. What is going to happen with it?
I do think you're going to have a section, a percentage of the UK holiday makers who won't even engage again. I think for some people this will put them off permanently. I think that almost that opportunity for the overseas holiday companies, I think naturally will shrink. There will be an element of people who won't, even maybe for 3 to 5 years. Some will never do it again. I think for some people will be put off for 3 to 5 years because, you hear about these queues at the airports as well. People maybe with young children. It's probably it's a traumatic experience as it is, isn't it? With a young family. Can you imagine it then if you've then got to hang around for 3 or 4 hours just as standard, plus you then start building in delays? Oh, I mean, who knows really? I mean, the list, as you say, was quite interesting. You look and you see the names. Oh, I know Portugal. Yeah, I know where Portugal is. Yeah, I know where Israel is. The Falkland Islands. And then there were names on there.
The Falkland Islands.
I'm quite good at geography. Yeah, I used to think I'm quite good at geography.
Falkland Islands?
Yeah,
who and is some of the places,
it's absolutely crazy. So, I mean, going back to Bulgaria, you mentioned before. Do you know if that's on the amber list or the red list? Do you have any idea where it currently sits? Can you find that out if you've got a holiday booked for later in the year?
It's on the where are we list. Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah,
we don't know. No. We really don't know. It's on it's on a list somewhere, isn't it? But we don't yet know. So we just have to hold on tight. You know, it's just unbelievable. I even renewed my passport. Mind you, I renewed my passport for 2 reasons. Little aside story here. One of the reasons I renewed my passport was because, and I'm going to have a little bit of a moan about government websites now, is because I actually this year had to renew my driving license as well.
Okay.
Here's an interesting thing for any of you folks out there. If you've actually got to renew your driving license this year, and a lot of people are now going, oh, I don't know, did I, when was the last time I even checked my driving license? And it was by chance I checked it to see, and it's running out, it was running out this year. But because you need a new photo license, I think it's 10 years or something like that.
Yeah.
I had to get that renewed. Oh my word. If you try to renew your driving license online, but you haven't got a passport, that is difficult, right?
Okay.
If you've got a passport, it's dead easy.
Right.
But honestly, I looked at it, and if I'd have tried to do it without a passport, you have to send in bills from home, and you have to get this count assigned by somebody else, and you have to do this and you have to do that, and then it could take months, and then you could end up with £1,000 fine. As it was, once I got my passport, I then applied for my driving license, got it in a week.
Yeah.
So it's a system that's set up to say, make sure you've got your passport, which will cost you money, and then of course we'll take some more money off you for your driving license. Brilliant. But I'll tell you what, some of these systems, some of these online systems with government systems do need overhauling. Absolutely need overhauling. I'm really concerned about, I know this has got nothing to do with ergonomics, but it's I'm on a rant. But I'm really concerned about anybody that wants to actually talk to anybody about any of these things anymore. I can't say which sort of government website line it was earlier in the week, but another one that I needed to contact. 3 times I tried to contact them. I went through all of the security clearance. Your voice is your password. My voice is my password. Got through all of that bit. Got to the bit where they said, and we're now connecting you to the operator, or to someone to help you. Okay. And that bit, it went, we are too busy to serve you now. Bye-bye. What? I mean, imagine if that was a business.
Yeah.
Right.
A commercial business.
A commercial business. Thank you. You've gone through all of our checks. We've got all of this data sorted out with you. We're now going to help you. Actually, no, go away.
It is frightening, isn't it? It's frightening if you think, if that were like, we've had discussion before, if that was your own business, is that how you would treat people? You're literally turning people away. But again, they can do it because they know you're going to have to come back to them, and therefore there's a pretty blatant disregard for the customer, because actually, if it was some type of government body, whatever it is you're contacting them for, you need to have. So they'll just work on the basis, well, they'll come back later, won't they, at some point?
Well, what I don't like about it is the fact that, and I don't know whether anyone else gets a bit kind of paranoid about this, but it's the fact that it says, if you don't update us in terms of this data by such and such a date or within a certain timeline, you will get fined. Right? Yeah. It's going to have serious consequences for you. Yeah. It could cost you this amount of money. And yet you can't get through to actually give the information that you need to. It's just wrong. Well, you can do it all online, sir. You do realize this. Yeah, but do you know what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that is that sometimes the questions that they ask online, if it's a complicated situation, don't ask the right questions. No. And then you're not sure whether it's been dealt with correctly or not. Now, actually,
it's actually reminded me of a situation I had last summer to do with car insurance. So actually, it isn't just commercial businesses. So I was changing insurer for my car, and you couldn't cancel the policy online. You had to ring up. you couldn't get through on the telephone because there was an hour's wait. So I then just cancelled the direct debit because I thought, well, there's no way I can get in touch with them. They won't let me. I can't do it online. They can't take my phone call. And I ended up then in some sort of hoo-ha with a senior manager there, and ended up agreeing that I'd pay an extra 1 month, direct debit because I'd sort of broken the contract or whatever they were saying it was. But it was a huge paradox that you can't cancel the policy online. You've got to call in. But their phone lines were actively saying, we're too busy because of COVID. We can't take your call. Well, it's like, well, hang on a second. What am I meant to do?
I know. That's just dreadful. I'm just checking. There are people watching us, which is great. So I see there's 5 people online. If you're online and watching, please do make yourself known. Do put something in the comments. I've actually just put into the comments as well, which is confusing. It's so confusing when you come out of this, go back into LinkedIn and you're watching yourself like 5 minutes before because there's a delay, just in case anybody swears, which we're not going to. But I've just put into the comments, and there you are. We've got some comments. I've just put the link to this show. So if you're watching, you want to join us, you have something really interesting to say, do join us. Hit the StreamYard link. Come in. We will vet you first. Yes. So I mean, if you don't look like you pass muster, we might not let you in. But we will put you in the backstage area and then more than likely let you in. So yet again this week, there's been some really interesting stories about the whole kind of office workload, etc. One of the ones that you picked up on, and we talked about just before we came live on air, was Barclays suggesting that we've zoomed out on a Friday. We now have to have for Barclays staff a Zoom-free Friday.
HSBC, Graham. Let's not do any disservice to Barclays. HSBC.
Sorry. Well, I think that perhaps they should all do it.
Yeah.
Okay. HSBC Zoom-free Friday. So tell us about that, Stephen. I mean, this is a great idea, surely.
I mean, I think it's just based on pure sort of feedback. I mean, actually, it's good on a number of levels. Actually, it shows there's real engagement with their staff because clearly the feedback is coming from their staff that actually they're being over-Zoomed. And tying into that story was the other one that I know a couple of other people have mentioned on LinkedIn, was the fact that the guy in charge of Zoom, or the founder of Zoom, was saying you needed to get more people back to the office so we can have less Zoom calls. So almost people are comfortable to say, actually, we're being over-Zoomed, over-teamed, whatever it would be, teams. And it's good to see that someone like HSBC are almost listening to their staff and going, actually, we need to do something about this. We're giving people a very conscious break that on a Friday, after what potentially has been a heavy week of Zoom calls or Teams calls, actually we're going to kind of put a foot down and say, no, they're not happening on a Friday. I guess to make people's a nice finish of the week, going into the weekend, etc. So it's really interesting, as I say, on 2 levels. They're sort of acknowledging the issue, or doing something about the issue, but also listening to the feedback from their employees who are clearly uncomfortable with the amount of Zoom calls or say Teams that they're being asked to do as part of their role at the moment.
It would be really interesting going and talking about ergonomics for a second. It'd be really interesting to see whether HSE do anything around online video calls in the guidance going forward, because ultimately we've never had this situation before, but things have now changed so much during this pandemic that culture has now been set. We've talked about it a little bit before, the HSE guidelines, etc., which, really haven't been completely overhauled for years now. I mean, from your perspective, do you think now is the time that perhaps HSE need to sort of get out there and talk to a number of key businesses, get some feedback, do a proper study, get a rewriting of the HSE the health and safety executive guidelines for working, and actually incorporate some modern working practices into those guidelines as well?
I think so. I think the sheer number of people, the sheer number of people who have worked at home and will continue working at home, but not just home, whether it's a shared workspace or whatever. I think the dynamic of where people work, have worked, will work has changed so much that you can't leave the rules the same. The guidance can't be the same. I mean, like we've said before, we'd really like to see that guidance be a little bit more enforced, because it is simply guidance. I've spoke to, lots of companies, where people aren't being given what they need or being assessed correctly from home because it is considered guidance, and therefore there's no sort of legal obligation around their employees doing it. I mean, it's good to hear. I actually was out doing a face-to-face meeting earlier this week, and it was great to hear that the company I met with, who are one of our partners, one of their big customers is a huge global player, and they were actually doing lots and lots of assessment. So it's great to see that it's happening. I still think it's in the minority of companies who are doing it, but I think the rules have to be changed, because how we work and where we work has changed and is not going to go back to what it was. You can't just go, well, the old rules that were in place since 1997 are still relevant. It has to incorporate other things, and one of those things you've said is calls. Should there be a limit on how many? I mean, again, how you enforce it, who knows? But maybe companies themselves should put some guidelines in and say, actually, you can only do 3 hours of Zoom calls or team calls, whatever it is, per day. Some sort of limit or guidance, just to sort of encourage people. Yes, it's a way of communicating, but actually making it proportionate and at a point where people don't feel as if it's taking over their lives.
Yeah. The other part of that is, does the structure of that need to change? Because one of the problems is, and I think one of the problems as to why it hasn't changed drastically over the years, is because at the very root of that guidance and the very sort of essence of where it comes in is that there's a risk assessment. And I've carried out those risk assessments, and I've carried out workplace needs assessments for years. I just wonder how much longer we can carry on with a risk assessment in the typical tick box framework and say, is this in place? Yes. Is this in place? Yes. Those assessments where it's, let's look at lighting. Let's look at this. Because if the nature of work changes and where we work changes, how do you assess that? I mean, ultimately, if one day I'm at home and the next day I'm in an office somewhere, and maybe I start using co-working spaces all over the country or whatever, and next day I'm outside working, I'm not saying that's everybody's going to work like that, but if people are working like that, how do you assess that effectively? I'd love to get one of the people that are really involved in those, commercially, those assessment processes. Maybe if you're watching, come on and join us one week and talk about this as a thing. But here we are. Victor says, it's the employer's responsibility to provide the employee with adequate tools, be it training or whatever, to ensure they have performed self-assessment with regard to the ergonomics of the workplace. I absolutely agree, Victor. I know I've been there as a workplace assessor, but what I'm saying is, quite often that is done, that assessment process is done in situ somewhere.
A single location, a single place.
Single location, or it's seen as like, well, this is the main place where I work, etc. But ultimately, is there another way of doing it? So it's more around, you need to educate your staff to a certain level about this, and actually then you need to look at the outcomes rather than necessarily the process. Because all I'm saying is that assessing someone who works here, there and everywhere in their office space and say, well, that's all right. They've got the right chair there. They've got the right environment there, the right lighting. But then they work here, there, and everywhere means that, it could be 80% of the time they don't have a necessary environment. So isn't it more about, well, actually, I need to know as an employee what, the company believes is right in terms of looking after myself, etc. And and then I need to feed back on a regular basis about whether I've got any issues in terms of looking after myself.
Are you saying greater self-assessment, Graham, that actually employees should be given a basic level of knowledge to go, whichever location you're working in, these are the sort of rules you should be working to? Do you think that could potentially come in, that those multi-location people need the ability to better self-assess?
Excuse me, it's the cold. I'm not going down with it, don't worry.
No.
I didn't even know what ergonomics meant. I don't know who that LinkedIn user is. Do tell us who you are. But trust me, even a lot of ergonomists argue about what the word ergonomics means.
Didn't we have this the week about someone describing a product as an ergonomic mouse? And we said, well, how can the mouse be? The mouse itself cannot be ergonomic, can it?
My wallet's very ergonomic.
Yeah.
Because, it's very fluid. So basically, I think I guess that's where I'm going with this. Is there a better way in which we enable staff to self-assess?
Yeah,
a little bit like with modern sort of management feedback systems, rather than doing an appraisal at management level with a member of staff once a year, you do regular assessments. But the regular assessments are done mainly by the staff with each other and with peer-to-peer, right? And then feedback from that goes back to the management, and the management try and help the staff develop. So it's not, there should be no shocks in these things.
No,
I guess is what I'm saying as well. Why again, we're leaving it to a system where potentially, we wait a year, we find out when we suddenly do an assessment with someone, there's some problems. And now we've got to put it right. And now we start the process of trying to put it right. Surely, if there's continual assessment, self-assessment, and a continual feedback, then actually there should be no shocks.
Yeah.
Last week I went out. I stopped at. I'm going to bring back where we first met. Right. I went out. I stopped at a service station. I tried to do some work at a service station. It was pretty uncomfortable. Right, because I didn't have any of my equipment with me that would be necessary to work comfortably at a service station. Oh, right. Okay. Well, then we better give you some equipment to work when you're out at a service station. Hey, presto.
Yeah.
You're dealing with the issue right there, right then, and it doesn't suddenly get to a point. It could be better for cash flow as well for businesses, rather than get to once in a year where suddenly you do all of these assessments with all of your staff and you've got to buy them all kit. As people find the issues, you buy them kit. Victor's coming up with
good point.
It is about education. Yeah, look at manual handling. Once you've had good training, you will apply that every time you lift something in or out of the workplace. It becomes ingrained. That's exactly what we're saying here, Victor. I absolutely believe it's about education. And I just think maybe not only about education, but maybe re-looking at that assessment piece as well, and just seeing whether there's a way of making it much more about self-assessment. Now, that doesn't put anybody that's a workplace assessor, because that'd be dreadful, out of business.
Yeah, absolutely.
All my old friends. But actually, probably what we need those people doing is turning their businesses around to offer the training. Right? So people, rather than sitting there and writing report on X, Y, and Z, and having to stick a plaster on someone once it's already happened. Those people could be very proactive within businesses, offering training and advice about, how to avoid issues. What are the best things to do? What's best practice? And that would
still
just
be the
turn the whole
need.
thing around.
Yeah, there'd still be the need for that assessment, Graham. But what we're almost saying is, as part of the assessment, actually the assessment enhances itself, because you go and I don't know. Let's say, for example, someone works at home 3 days a week. You go and do the assessment at their home, and you assess what they need, and you talk about that. They then declare, well, actually, the other 2 days of the week, I go and work in the office. So you provide them as part of that assessment. It's still the same individual, but you give them the tools and the skills to almost then self-assess, self-correct, and set up correctly when they're not at home in those 2 days in the office. So you say you need the assessment individually, but you're offering an enhanced service because the number of people working across multiple locations. I mean, I don't know what the number will be, double or triple or whatever it will be, but pre-March 2020, the people working in multiple locations as opposed to one single location is going to have gone off the scale. So the opportunity is to help those people when they're not working at the place where you've conducted and undertaken the assessment. So actually there is, like I say, as Victor said, there's an education piece to say, right, we're going to help you with this assessment, but for those 1 or 2 days a week you're not here, this is what you need to do and this is what you need to apply.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the education bit is where it's so vital, because what I still see as I look over the internet on a day-to-day basis within this area and read all of the posts and look at all of the comments, is a lot of confusion and a lot of poor education when it comes to things. I read a lot of people saying, I don't sit anymore, or I've moved to a standing desk and I no longer sit. Now, that there are health benefits in standing as opposed to sitting, absolutely. But at the same time, most people would struggle to stand all day, and even with that, just standing statically all day long isn't great for you. Sorry, folks, if you thought that standing was the answer. Standing alone is not the answer. So this is where I kind of, and we'll come on to another story in a second, but this is where I kind of disagree with any of these people that say, part of the thing that we need to do is just get back to the office where the better setup is. No, I don't agree with that. I honestly believe that we've got to encourage people to work anywhere. I honestly think that is part and parcel of what we need to do. And interestingly, I've seen or spoken to several people in the last week about, what we previously talked about, which is a growth in communal working spaces or collaborative working spaces. And I think that is just going to go. I think we are going to see the opportunity for people to not necessarily travel abroad and work, complete digital nomadism, etc., especially at the moment. But I do think we are going to see more opportunity for people to get out and about and vary where they're working.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's necessarily always going to be just office and a place at home. I think, even if people are continuing to work from home, in order to be around other people, they may start using coffee shops that provide the right spaces for people, or they may use these communal working spaces.
I hope I'm not jumping across the other story, but there was another one that sprung to mind, and it actually ties in nicely with what exactly you've just said. Did you see that Pret-a-Manger, I believe it is, they're going to start setting up inside Tesco's, I believe.
Sorry, who was that?
Pret-a-manger are going to start opening within Tesco's, I think. I'm just going to double check that story as we're talking. And they had realised that the ability to offer those transient workers the facility to be able to go and set up and work in a coffee shop. So they'd identified an opportunity to sort of tap into that whole sort of transient worker. Yes, it is. Yeah, the headline, Pret-a-manger heads to Tesco's in battle for new customers. But then once you get into the article and read more, it's talking about remote workers and actually uses the word hybrid working that we've spoken about. So it's forcing them to respond. So they're trialing it within 4 stores. But the idea is to try and pick up that trade from those hybrid mobile workers by putting a Pret-a-manger within a Tesco store. So that's quite interesting concept.
Just before we go on to this, Victor, again, who says offices are good? Well-being comes from more than just the space. It's the whole package. It starts with the employer and should trickle down. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So yeah, Pret in Tesco. So now hang on a minute. So how does this work? So Pret are opening, instead of it being a Tesco's cafe, it would be a Pret cafe in Tesco's.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know whether they're going into Tesco's that don't have a cafe already. But as I say, they're looking to sort of set themselves up within that. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting concept, isn't it? And they're also talking about how they're increasing their presence within motorway service stations as well. So again, they're clearly seeing that maybe. I mean, it was something like 3,000 people. I think they removed from their workforce when everything kicked in. If you think of Pret, you traditionally think of a town or city centre, don't you? Well, no one's been going in, but actually what they're identifying is if we're placed more strategically around the motorway network or maybe around the likes of Tesco's, which generally are out of city centre. We've spoken about those communal hubs, Graham. Maybe you might have someone go, actually, let's meet at the Tesco's that's on an industrial park in a small town, and we'll go and have a meeting there. So they're not they're not having to go into the office, but they're finding it's almost, I guess, a branded sort of communal workspace, isn't it? Potentially.
Yeah,
that serves
absolutely. Coffee. Victor's off. Thanks, Victor, for joining us today. But yeah, I mean, he says there Tesco's are desperate because their whole model changed. Yeah, I'm not sure whether Tesco's are actually desperate. I think this is probably more from Pret side, as you say. I think pretty much the supermarkets have dominated over this whole period. I mean, for long periods, what else has been open other than the supermarket? I always love it when you go into the supermarkets and the first thing you see is that massive stand with bottles and bottles and bottles of hand gel or masks at £5 a packet.
Yeah.
Honestly. Yeah. But I just think that again, we've talked about this before, but I think that whole landscape's going to have to change. I think some of the shops that have traditionally succeeded because they have been in a particular locale around business that has been there in that locality. And as you say, the footfall just hasn't been there. And now having to look at where is the change of conurbation? Where are people now coming together? And that is going to change. Again, it's actually going to change the way that we all work.
Yeah. And
that's the thing that I don't think everybody has cottoned on to yet. I think as the landscape changes and we see an influx of these businesses where, I mean, look at all those Debenham stores that are now going to go, and they're huge retail units.
John Lewis as well, we've mentioned as well, haven't we? John Lewis, huge locations,
etc. So what's going to fill those spaces? Surely to goodness, it's going to make sense for you to get the department store isn't working. The traditional department store, I just don't think it is working particularly anymore. But what potentially could work is a different form of department store. So I think people want to be in spaces with other people. Yeah. And I just think it's about, a space which feels a little bit more open and fluid. You're not even sure whether it's a shop or a space in a way. Yeah. So if you like, kind of almost take a shopping mall and put a shopping mall together in a shop with, but with a workspace and a shop, or a bit of a shop in a workspace. And, those whole spaces need to be redesigned and become a lot more fluid. And then you can have a kind of a food court, which serves, this joint working stroke mini shop kind of space. And maybe even some of those shop spaces might be really fluid as well to keep it active. If you think about, let's go back in time to when shops weren't shops, but they were markets, right? One of the great things about a kind of market space is that, sometimes people had their pitch, but from time to time, as you go to a market, those pitches move round a little bit, and the feel of that space changes. What's to say that we won't see that on the high street? And that, you go to this workspace stroke coffee area, whatever, and, 1 week there's this company there, and another week there's this company there.
I mean, you think of the Pret thing, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, it's not an area that I guess either of us have got huge expertise in, but if you look at it, previously they've located themselves in city centres near office blocks where people go to work. If the people aren't working there, you go and follow the people where they are working, and they're working near a home, and therefore those Tesco's type concepts are going to work because, like we've said, people don't want, people have enjoyed the flexibility in working from home, but they want the ability to meet people, and therefore, if you've got the ability to go meet someone at a supermarket out of town, but not traveling into the city centre, absolutely perfect. So you can totally understand what they're doing. They're simply moving their retail space to follow where people are working. It's a pretty simple concept.
If you look at me, if I look out my window, which is just here, and I walk for like 5 minutes in that direction, there's a Tesco.
Yeah.
Right now, if in that Tesco there was a Pret with a working space as well, and good Wi-Fi and comfortable chairs, and the ergonomics, etc., were right, then I would be tempted to go and spend a percentage of my day over there, because it would just be a change. And I can't see that other people wouldn't think that as well. It just makes sense, really. So they might have to change their car parking situation.
Yes.
You might have to buy a season ticket or something, because otherwise you got kicked out after 2 hours, but look, it makes sense for the supermarkets as well, doesn't it? When it comes to that, or it makes sense to any shop as well. If you go there to do your space, you're probably going to buy something in the supermarket while you're there as well.
Yeah. But ultimately, if you look at it from their perspective, the numbers of people, and pick London. Let's use London, which is always the sort of prime example. There is never, ever, ever going to be a return to the daily footfall of people going there to work. As an organisation like Pret, you've got to respond to that, and you're going to change, aren't you? Whatever the levels end up, whether it's 80%, I mean, you'd think it'll probably be about 30% on a Friday. You can't see Friday ever being busy for those office days. People have enjoyed the fact they can get finished at a reasonable time and enjoy a longer weekend. But you totally understand, loads of businesses have been forced to change by the pandemic, and someone like Pret, and I'm sure the others will probably do the same, literally moving their real space. And what are they doing? They're protecting jobs, aren't they? They're looking to sort of keep their same number of properties and potentially the same number of people. But they've recognized that if people aren't working there, what is the point in us being open?
Yeah. Now, I should say at this point, because people may have been holding on thinking, that that drummer guy is going to join us any minute now. Tom from Scritti Politti, the drummer from Scritti Politti, who, Stephen, you had to go and look up Scritti Politti, right?
I knew the name.
You knew the name, yeah,
vaguely.
but you had to go and do a little bit of, absolutely. Anyway, I had the Scritti Politti albums, you see, so I was there. Anyway, Tom was fine last night and was ready to come on the show, and all was good. But Tom went for his second AstraZeneca jab as of last night, and today he's not feeling so good. So he's had to cancel his whole day, bless him. But hopefully he will be with us next week. So, Tom, if you're listening, do get better soon.
Get well, Tom.
It does happen. Have you had both jabs yet, Stephen? You had one jab. You waiting for another?
No, one. So first one, and the second one's booked for 3rd of July. How old do you think I am, Graham? Saying I've had both already.
Well, no, on medical grounds, lots of people have had to.
I know. No, 3rd of July for the second one for me. Yeah.
Oh, 9th of July for me. So we're only a week or so behind.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I quite enjoyed mine first one. I had to travel an hour for it to beautiful Weymouth. But it was a lovely venue. It was inside an old church, which this pharmacy company had taken over. No queuing, no waiting, easy parking, easy access. Everyone. Now that I've said that, everyone's going to go to Weymouth for their next one. Yeah. Didn't really hurt a bit on the day. The next day did feel a little bit funny after shopping. So, and did you find your whole arm went a little bit funny for a while or not?
No, I didn't have that. I heard a few people say that. I had a really bad back the following day, which when I spoke to other people, no one else seemed to have that. So I didn't get the arm, but I had a very, very sore back for the following day. So I guess it's different people will get different sort of side effects, won't they? It'll affect people in different ways.
Yeah, well, apparently it's very unusual with the AstraZeneca to have side effects after the second jab. It's normally after the first. So I'm fingers crossed. Next time I'm down there, I have me jab and then I off to the pub. So have a different kind of side effect. Yeah, there we go. So hopefully, Tom will be joining us next week.
Great.
So the other story that I wanted to bring up, and again, we've covered this kind of story before. I was saying to you that the just beforehand that yet again we've seen yet another CEO saying my people are more productive when they're in the office, and you can tell that the people that really engage are really engaged in the job because they're the ones that want to work in the office rather than the ones that are working from home. Where are these people getting this?
I don't know.
From?
It's. I mean, we had it from Mr. Goldman Sachs, didn't we? Probably about 6 weeks ago now. So it's a funny one. You almost think, are there other reasons behind that? Are they locked into some ridiculously high rental agreement they can't get out of? And it would be embarrassing if there was only 5% of the workforce coming in. You have to think there's got to be other unnamed reasons, because that just flies in the face of what everyone else is saying. And that doesn't, I'm sure there are individuals within a business who do perform better in the office maybe than at home. But then, like you've touched on numerous occasions, have they got to look at their management structures? Do those people perform well because of a certain management structure? Maybe you need to change that to allow them to work from home. But you have to think there's sort of there's a subplot there, Graham, for me, something else that they're maybe not wanting to say direct. But it makes me think, have they just spent billions of pounds on new offices and therefore are tied in for the next 15 years? And maybe that they need to be seen to have people physically there.
I mean, I commented on that post when someone else posted on it, and thanks for posting that, because that was a great post. But and my comment was, well, maybe maybe, just maybe, that some of those people actually want to get back to the office because they're burnt out at home. You know, I mean, I wonder in terms of the lines of communication, whether, you know, listening to the manager's arguments underneath him, this CEO has decided, oh, this is great. You know, it's much better if our staff are back in the office, because the managers are saying, well, do you know what? Gerald over there is constantly saying he's struggling at the moment. And I just think if we can get them back to the office, it's all going to rectify itself. It's all going to be a lot better. But you think, going back to the initial conversation or the initial story that we had this week about Zoom Free Friday, maybe it's just something to do with that. Maybe if you stop having Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting with your staff at home, and, you know, getting them to log in at 7 o'clock in the morning to check their emails, and then keeping them going all day long and actually working them for a 16-hour day when they only did 9 and when they came into the office, maybe they would actually feel better about working from home. You know,
it's an interesting one. I mean, it's you do think, and you do look ahead and go, I wonder what will happen to that company or that organization's staff retention if they start, in inverted commas, forcing people back to the office. Because we've touched on it before, haven't we, around the employers who will do best, you know, post-pandemic are those who are offering flexibility, looking after their staff. But if you're going to start making people come back to the office, you've got to think that's got to have a negative effect on your staff retention and your talent pool, hasn't it? You know, when I can see HR departments being really, really busy, having to recruit people, new adverts, etc. You know, are they then going to look at it and go, do you know what? It wasn't such a great idea. We've lost Bob, we've lost Phil, we've lost Pete. That's all our experience has walked out the door. They've gone to one of our competitors, because they've allowed them to work at home, and by enforcing that return to the office, we've had a massive drain on the talent and experience and skill set in our business that makes us successful.
And, you know, the other side of that coin is, are a lot of businesses going to start using that a lot more as ammunition in terms of their adverts for high quality candidates, right? Not about price anymore, not about wages, not about salary. Now it's about, you know, headline, and you can flex work on this. This job is a flexible working job. You choose the hours that you do, and you choose when you do it. You know,
and you can also see people when you've been through an interview and they say, "Have you got any questions?" You know, I can almost see one of the first questions be, so how many days have I got to work in the office? Is that in my contract? So if they're not bringing it up, if they're not offering it up front to explain that, I can see people almost saying, okay, so how many days in the office? What's your flexible working policy? Because I think that potentially, you know, I think people will look at it and that will be people won't necessarily, money's important, you know, money to a degree is an important part of a package. It's an element of a package. I do wonder if the financial reward becomes in your whole decision-making process becomes a slightly smaller part, and actually a bigger part becomes where you choose to work. Like we've touched on, one of the subjects we really got into was sort of stealth pay rises and things like that, wasn't it? But I wonder if people will look at it and go, well, I can earn X at that job, but I have to go to the office every day. I get less free time. I've got more transport costs. That one pays a little bit less. However, look at the flexibility I get. Look at look at what I'm not having to spend as opposed to what I'm spending. So, you know, that will be a real interesting point as to how much that decides where people work is not what the remuneration is, but where you can work and what the flexibility is.
Well, and going back to the event that we did a month or so ago, which was educational based, and I need to touch base with some of the people that were at that event to see whether anything's happened in terms of getting some student data or starting to get some student data. But, you know, I just think about it. When I came out of university and started work, you know, my main aim was to try and put down a deposit on a building, right? Get on the property ladder, get going, etc. with an aim of, you live in that property for a few years, you sell that, you make a little bit of money, you get up on the property ladder a little bit, and then you need enough money from a job in order to pay that mortgage, get that mortgage paid, etc., etc. So you're on that ladder. University students now, my son's at uni at the moment. They're going to come out of uni with a mortgage anyway.
Yeah.
Right. Which is their debt for being at university. Having, now in terms of paying that back, how quickly they pay that back is actually determined by how much money they're going to be earning. So you see where I'm going with this,
I do.
right? And they categorically, most of them will struggle anyway to buy a property anyway, because the property prices have gone through the roof. So actually, in your head from the beginning, is money as much of an incentive as it used to be? Is it? Do you have the same strategy, or actually is it? Do you know what? That if I go and work for that company, I get to live the lifestyle that I really want to live. They're going to treat me as the kind of person that I want to be treated as. I'll be able to do this, that as well, which interests me outside of work. I can perhaps incorporate some of that into work as well. I'll be able to travel a little bit, all of these things which might be incentives. And I'm renting, so actually, next year, was part of this scheme with this business, I'm going to actually travel to the other side of the world. I'm going to live there for a year. I don't own a property, and I don't actually want to pay. I don't want to pay my student loan back, so I don't want to earn too much money either.
I knew that was where you were going.
I'm just saying, it may be, don't shoot the messenger, but it may be that's the case. In which case, these people the people at the top need to understand that and shift their attention, because it's if that is the case, certainly no, from my son's point of view, money is definitely not going to be everything. He'd far rather that he would be involved with the right projects, the right companies, if they continue to help him learn and develop and whatever, that's more important to him. He knows he's probably never going to earn enough money to buy a property or whatever, until maybe later on, if he's successful in what he's doing, but initially, and so a lot of people are going to miss out on talent, I think.
Yeah, you can see HR departments again sort of looking at it and going, you want us to get those type of people for the role, but you're expecting them to come into the office every day. It ain't going to happen, is it really? So yeah, if you're an organization looking to be successful, you want the best talent. That is going to become a pretty big stumbling block for getting people in if you put some of these restrictions in, especially if you're looking to, if you're trying to pinch someone from the competition's had full flexible working, but you want them in the office 3 or 4 days a week. Someone's going to go, okay, you can pay me a little bit more money, but I'm going to have to get up at, leave the house so much earlier, get back so much later. I've got all the commute, the extra. They're going to go, no, thanks. I'll stick where I am. So yeah, I think it's a bit of hot air, to be honest. I mean, I know there's a piece around the government want people back into the city centres. I get that to a point, but that doesn't mean people have to go there every day. They have to be offered an element of flexibility. So yeah, I think it will be a big deciding factor as to where people work, as to what's the flexibility. And as you say, the financial piece, whilst it's important, maybe that badge of honor about owning a property when you're a lot younger, like your son, is no longer the big thing, is it really? It's not the be all and end all, is it? I want the flexibility. What if I want to go and do something else? That property ties me down.
Absolutely. So as a final hurrah for today, I want to cover this very quickly, and
Okay.
I'm going to ask you something directly here. So what's in your onboarding package now? You'll see these posts from time to time, folks, on things like LinkedIn or Twitter. So, when you see them, do point them out to me. But especially within tech companies, someone joins a tech company and you get this photograph of this wonderful package that's been left to them on their desk. There may be a brand new computer in there. There may be a nice box of chocolates, some socks, some perfume, all of the a bottle of champagne, lovely. Some tat as well from the company with their name on it.
Yeah.
All these wonderful things. But I mean, how, talking about the assessment thing again, talking about onboarding people properly into a company, how pointless is most of that? And I just interested. You don't have to name names, obviously, but do you know are there any customers that use any backup product in an onboarding package?
Yes, one or two.
There you go.
One or two.
Because
I think,
for me, I just don't understand why more companies don't get this right. If you're trying to bring, it fits into the conversation that we just had. If you're trying to bring people in with the right kind of cultural expectations for working at that company, if you give them a load of stuff that's going to fade, is transient, and is going to last 5 minutes, well, it's pretty pointless. And you're still going to have to do the exercise of, doing the risk assessment with them and bringing them on board and telling them what's right or wrong. So why not build that all in? I'd love to hear of the best onboarding package that anyone has got from a health and well-being point of view.
Yeah.
Who has given their staff, when they come on board, the right ergonomic equipment? Who has given them some advice on ergonomics, or made sure that they've had an independent assessment as part of that onboarding package? Who has given them a gym pass for 6 months to get them out and being fit and at the gym? Who's given them a healthy eating coupon so that they can get, a Gusto or other makes are available on the market to the home, right, for 6 months to get them, get them eating healthy? Who's given them some advice, a video or some advice or whatever on mental health awareness or whatever? Who's done that? I mean,
what about the flip side, Graham? Who's done the worst? Who's just given someone a tin? I mean, you also get. I always remember it was a tin of mints, wasn't it? It was like a little tin of mints and things like that. A little branded box of chocolates and all that. It'd be interesting to know who's done the best and what's someone's. You would like to think that in the last 15 or 16 months, people have really, really upped their game, wouldn't you, on this? They've realised that what they've done before was absolutely, totally inadequate. So you'd like to think people have raised their game, but it'd be great to get some sort of real life examples. Because as you say, you often see things on LinkedIn or Facebook. Oh, I've just joined X, Y, and Z PLC, and look what they gave me. And you look and you think, and how is that helping you?
Well, I can probably tell you what the worst is.
Okay.
Because I heard from someone who's a workplace assessor during the week, and you obviously can't say who they are or who the client was or anything, but of a story of someone that joined a business at the beginning of this kind of pandemic, right? I was having massive mental health issues, and one of the reasons being is for 11 months she has had no proper contact with her management. That's the worst.
Yeah.
In the job, working for that business on the day-to-day basis, but no one's come up beside that person and said, what is it you need? How are you getting on? Just throwing work at them.
Gosh.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. So that's that's got to be the worst. No chocolates, no anything, not even but nice that you've joined us. Actually, just taking that person on as, thanks, you're working for us now. Here's the work, and by the way, we don't care about you. So If you can beat that as a worse, tell us, but without naming names, because for legal reasons we don't want to get into trouble. But if you
should watch, I'm going to watch out now, Graham, all week when scouring on LinkedIn and things. I'm now going. You know what will happen now? I won't see one, but I'm going to try and find over the next week what's the best and what's the worst that I see someone putting on LinkedIn as an onboarding package.
Yeah. So please, if you've just joined a company and you're just joining a company in the next week or so, do come back and tell us, or post on either Stephen and mine's profile on LinkedIn or my profile on Twitter what you got, so that we can come back and discuss this, because I think it's a great topic. So thanks for joining us for another hour of Wow Ergonomics. Some great conversation yet again. This is all going to be wrapped up, sealed with a kiss, and put on Spotify later in the day. So you'll be able to find it there. There's about 20 more of these on Spotify as well. So do go back over the existing ones and have a look. You can also watch these on YouTube on A Better Way of Life YouTube channel. I'll put the link to that in the comments after this. But do continue to put your comments on here as you watch this during the day. I know that 12 o'clock is not a great time for everybody, but I do know that as the day goes on, more and more people watch these shows. So if you have any comments, still put the comments in there. I love going back and having a look at those comments during the week. So from me and Stephen, thank you very much for watching. And hopefully next week we will be joined by Tom and his drums. So I look forward to that. Bye for now.
See you next week.